The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
The war in Syria, and you may actually hear from grown-up reporters who are lying through their teeth or ignorant beyond imagining that, oh, the war in Syria, yes, Russia intervened in Syria. Well, do you know that that Obama tasked the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government, starting 4 years before Russia intervened? What kind of nonsense is that? And how many times did the New York Times report on Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential order to the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad? 3 times in 10 years. This is not democracy. This is a game. And it's a game of narrative.
I think you guys now think my new man crush is Professor Jeffrey Sachs. And it kind of is. Who was my previous man crush? Oh, Vivek. Everybody thought my man crush was on Vivek. My bromance was with Vivek. I think I've moved on to Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Okay, I am going to use today to kind of play a bunch of clips for you because I'm getting a lot of great feedback on the clips. Anyway, I haven't talked about Syria much. I really haven't, partially because, honestly, I've just been trying to see what plays out, and I realized okay, I do need to kind of bring this into the mix because it is an important situation that's taking place. And so, I will tell you what is taking place in Syria, on the surface is made out to look like, oh, Bashar al-Assad, he's the worst person in the world. And by the way, he probably is. I don't think that guy's a good guy. I've said this 100 times. None of these people are good people fundamentally. But the question is, are they being deemed bad people for what reasons and the right reasons? And so, when I first saw the invasion of Syria, again, my gut instinct was, this is another covert regime change, a la Saddam Hussein in Iraq. We've talked about that before. I still haven't gotten a chance to really dig into the Muammar Gaddafi stuff in Libya. But fundamentally, somebody texted me. They're like, dude, you're starting to use the word fundamentally so much. You're reminding me of that little kid in the one video. And I was like, which kid? He said the apparently kid.
What did you think about the ride?
It was great. And apparently, I've never been on live television before, but apparently sometimes I don't watch the news because I'm a kid, and apparently Grandpa just gives me a remote after we watch the Powerball.
Oh my God, that is so hilarious. That's this little redheaded kid, and he's like, apparently I don't watch the news very much, and apparently I've never been on live TV before. Very funny. Guess where I found that clip? Yeah, you got it, TikTok. I went into TikTok and I literally typed in search apparently kid, and it came up. All right, so getting back to Syria, here's the rest of the Professor Jeffrey Sachs clip where, again, he's talking about how they've really wanted regime change in Syria since 2012 and the Obama administration.
Abe Schultzke, if you want to know the name of the PR genius. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird. And the way it is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them.
I just want to point this out. So he's basically saying Benjamin Netanyahu from 1995. How crazy is that? 29 years ago from 1995. And by the way, I vetted this. It's absolutely all true. Benjamin Netanyahu has been wanting to topple the governments of the countries that surround Israel in order to, expand Israel into this greater Israel project, but also obviously look out for their best interest. Now, again, I know I'm critical of Netanyahu because I call a spade, but listen, if I was him, I would be doing the same thing. Like, there's a difference between being critical of someone's intentions and, honestly, if I put myself in their shoes, I don't want to say respecting their intentions, because I can't really respect somebody that's committed and committing genocide. But obviously, he's doing what he thinks is right for his country and his people. The problem is nobody's really standing up to him enough. And especially the United States is not, giving him any guardrails when it comes to, how he is conducting himself. That's the problem.
That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony. So what is this democracy versus dictatorship? Come on, these are not even sensible terms.
All right, so fundamentally, what has happened in Syria basically 2 weeks ago was that Bashar al-Assad, so think of him as the Saddam Hussein type character, him and his family, I think I have talked about this a little bit, but they've reigned Syria for 50 years. Al-Assad himself has been president or prime minister or whatever for 24 years. And, he basically got overthrown by a rebel group of forces that's being led by a Vladimir Zelensky type guy. This guy, Jelani, which is his name. Now, here's the funny thing about this Jelani guy. This dude went from being like Osama bin Laden looking to then getting like a extreme makeover to where now he's like wearing suits. Well, maybe not suits, but he's definitely wearing jackets, and like he's getting cover stories in the New York Times, and he's getting like, next thing you know, he'll be on Vanity Fair. It's pretty funny, the metamorphosis of this guy and the different phases. Actually, here's another great content creator named Eric Warsaw, whom I'm going to record an episode with, but give a listen. He did a pretty nice job of recapping the extreme makeover of al-Jelani.
We're going to examine the 3 phases of the new Syrian leader, al-Jelani. In his first phase, he was an Arab Muslim and had that nice rebel look about him. In phase 2, al-Jelani is a revolutionary al-Jelani with that Fidel Castro type of look and ready to lead the people. Then al-Jelani hooked up with Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky's public relations team and came out with this image where it's strong but like a nice guy kind of image with a nice trimmed down beard, and look, they could be brothers. It's a good, wholesome, strong look for a leader. Good job to the marketing team. And then in the final phase, we have a nice suit and collar look to show that the revolution's over and we're getting down to business. And this is al-Jelani doing business with the British government and al-Jelani doing business with the French. Look, you can't even tell them all apart. And he really wants to distance himself from the old government and have a new, different look. So here's the former leader and here's al-Jelani. See the difference? No tie. So that's really going to show that this dictatorship is going to be much different than the last one. And that's the 3 phases it took for al-Jelani to go from being a rebel Arab to now being your average white guy. And all within 1 week, too. It's amazing what politics and money will do to you.
That is so spot on. I wish you could see the graphics. The video's on the Deep Shallow Dive Instagram page if you do want to see the graphics. But basically, this guy transformed in 1 week from literally what you would think of as a Islamic rebel leader, like the typical stereotype image of that. And again, just picture like Osama bin Laden, crazy beard, dressed like in scrubs basically, and looking very jihadist. Yeah, Yeah, basically looking very jihadist. And then all of a sudden in the course of a week, bro is wearing like Tom Ford suits and doing interviews with Vanity Fair. Politics, man, politics. All right. So anyway, I did want to talk a little bit about Syria. Like I said, I do think this is, now here's the thing, actually, let me caveat everything I just said with, if this leaves the people of Syria in a better place, and honestly, only time will tell if that is the case, then I'm all for it. I mean, again, I don't really know much about the Assad family, and I'm definitely not a supporter of, what I've heard. Now, I haven't taken the time to vet what I've heard, but fundamentally, all I really care about, whether it's Syria, whether it's Gaza, whether it's whoever or wherever, is that the people are in a better state and the people are taken care of. But you know how it goes. At the end of the day, no one cares about the people. Heck, that same thing happens in the United States. It's actually so wild if you think about it. Look at the recent hurricanes in North Carolina, and then what took place with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, and then what's taken place in maybe not the big cities in Florida, but the smaller cities in Florida. Think about that. The people inside the United States who get decimated with natural disasters. I forget, all these small towns that get absolutely obliterated by tornadoes. They're not taken care of. So, what's funny? It's like you think about these other countries like Syria and Palestine and Gaza and that area. You really do. We consider them third world countries. And then here in, the great US of A, which is obviously a superpower first world country, when something happens to a part of the country or a part of the population that nobody cares about, I mean, it's almost the same thing. It really is. And this situation in North Carolina, I'm blanking on the name of the town, but the situation in North Carolina recently is a perfect example. They're not getting the kind of aid that you would expect, but instead, we continue to send millions and billions of dollars to foreign countries to fight wars that we are not directly a part of in terms of the geography. Think about that. That's insane. All right, next clip. Oh, actually, this worked out perfect. Okay, speaking of what I just talked about, it was Hurricane Helene. So here's a clip from James Lee. I actually recorded with him yesterday, and that podcast is going to air on Monday. So on Monday, we will get a DSD finally, and it'll be my interview with James. But give this a listen. This was another great clip that he put together that speaks to kind of what I was just talking about.
You will not believe what Lindsey Graham, U.S. Senator from South Carolina, had to say about the devastation of Hurricane Helene when he was asked about it on Fox News.
This is like a double bonus clip because it talks about Lindsey Graham, top 3 Ray D-bag list.
I've been going all over South Carolina like most people. I hadn't slept much. But look what's going on in Israel. Our friends in Israel surrounded by people that want to kill them, destroy them, a second Holocaust in the making.
Oh, but Israel, is he a member of the Knesset or the U.S. Congress? Based on the amount of money he gets from AIPAC, over $1 million, you might have your answer. But let's just also put this thing in numbers so you can get a sense of who the U.S. government cares about. Kamala Harris announced that the federal government will be providing $750 for the victims of Hurricane Helene.
Really quick, again, $750 is what the victims of Hurricane Helene each received.
Now, this past year alone, the U.S. has given over $33.2 billion to Israel. So that's $750 for Americans whose house and livelihoods have been destroyed, and $33 billion for war in Israel. Divide that by their population, 9.5 million, that's $3,500 per Israeli, meaning that for the U.S. government, people like Lindsey Graham, they value Israeli lives 5 times more than American lives.
All right. Again, remember, Lindsey Graham is literally the senator from South Carolina. So that's his constituency. Anyway, the episode with James, like I said, it'll air on Monday. It's really good. This dude is very sharp, and we got into a lot of topics. All right, next clip. This goes back to 2015. And this is President Trump with CNN's Jake Tapper. Now, this is before Trump obviously was elected for the first time. Give this a listen. It's very interesting. And man, this is lining up this episode. So again, this is 2015.
But you also recently said that the Middle East would be better off with Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and Assad in power. How does...
I didn't say Assad.
Really quick, I just want to point out that was super interesting. So again, he says, look at what happened with Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. And then he did say, I didn't say Assad. So I thought that was actually pretty astute of Trump, because again, the verdict's never been super clear about Assad, but I thought that was great that he said, I didn't say Assad. I was talking about Saddam and Gaddafi. All right, listen to the rest.
But we certainly have not gained anything with Gaddafi. And you look at what happened. I mean, look at Libya. Look at Iraq. Iraq used to be no terrorist. He would kill the terrorists immediately. It was like, now it's the Harvard of terrorism. Iraq. If you look at Iraq from years ago, I'm not saying he was a nice guy. He was a horrible guy. But it was a lot better than it is right now. Right now, Iraq is a training ground for terrorists. Right now, Libya, nobody even knows Libya. Frankly, there is no Iraq and there is no Libya. It's all broken up. They have no control. Nobody knows what's going on.
The world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
And Gaddafi in power?
100%.
It's seriously such a convoluted overall situation that requires you to really look at things from a 30,000-foot perspective and apply nuance to it. And it's kind of like that expression, the devil, I think it's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Hold on, let me see. See, I just whipped out my phone and I went to the ChatGPT app and I asked what the expression was. And it says, yes, the expression you're referring to is better the devil you know than the devil you don't. It means it's often safer or more comfortable to deal with a familiar but unpleasant situation or person than to take the risk with something or someone new that could be worse.
Now, as far as Assad is concerned,
what about the human rights abuses?
Let's talk about, well, you don't think they're happening now? They're worse now than they ever were. People are getting their heads chopped off. They're being drowned. Right now, they're far worse than they were ever under Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. I mean, look what happened. Libya is a catastrophe. You look at our ambassador as an example, okay? Libya is a disaster. Iraq is a disaster. Syria is a disaster. The whole Middle East. And it all blew up around Hillary Clinton and around Barack Obama. It all blew up.
I'm telling you, I know some of you are rolling your eyes, and that's fine, but the dude is right. He just is. Man, I wish Trump had a better way of messaging things. Actually, I think he messaged that perfectly fine, because again, it is all true. We will deep dive on the Gaddafi thing and the whole Benghazi situation and all of that. But, the devil we knew, at least we kind of knew what was going on. But that's the thing. Part of the plan, and, I've talked about this with the economic hitman stuff with John Perkins and all that, is, they want chaos. They want disruption. They want, the Middle East and those countries to be up in arms, because that's when it's easier to conduct regime change or to, go after natural resources and all that. Pretty crazy, man. I'm telling you, it's pretty crazy once you really start to open your mind to, even what's possible, even what's potentially possible. All right, next clip.
Who do you think has been making foreign policy decisions in the United States? This is a question in the United States. Who is making these decisions?
I wouldn't guess. I haven't seen Tony Blinken for years.
All right, we're about to get into a little Tucker Carlson marathon here. And you're going to see the diversity of clips of his that I play, and that should show you, no one else is interviewing these people. No one else is talking to literally no one else is talking to these people that he gets access to. So this is Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, we talked about this last week in an episode. I think I played the initial clip where Tucker was in Russia, and I thought he was going to interview Putin again, but he interviews this Sergei Lavrov guy. And again, this is the Russian foreign minister. And if you remember, we talked about how it's pretty ridiculous that there's really no communication between the Biden administration and Russia. And that's been the case for this entire administration. So for the past 4 years, but Lavrov focuses on the past 2 years, and he's talking about Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
2 years ago, I think, at the G20 summit, I was representing Putin, and his assistant came up to me during a meeting and said that Tony wants to talk just for 10 minutes. I left the room, we shook hands, and he said something about the need to de-escalate and so on and so forth. I hope he is not going to be angry with me since I am disclosing this. But we were meeting in front of many people present in the room. And I said, we don't want to escalate. You want to inflict strategic defeat upon Russia. He said, no. It is not strategic defeat globally. It is only in Ukraine.
You've not spoken to him since?
No.
Have you spoken to any officials in the Biden administration since then?
I don't want to ruin their career.
But have you had meaningful conversations?
No.
The guy's not lying. So the takeaway from this, and again, I'm asking all of you Democrats out there who support the Biden administration to rise above to 30,000 feet and think about, look at how much money we've sent to Ukraine over the past 2 years. There's estimates of that being upwards of $200 billion. Don't you think that we should have communication with the Soviet team and the Soviet government and Putin and Lavrov and all this guy? Don't you think $200 billion of your taxpayer money deserves more than 10 minutes from Tony Blinken with Sergei Lavrov at the G20 summit? Seriously, again, I'm telling you, don't get emotional about this stuff. Just look at it as common sense. And remember, fundamentally, we're supposed to be in charge, meaning the United States citizens and taxpayers, So we should demand more out of our leaders. We should demand more than 10 minutes of discussion between our government and the government of the country that we are sending $200 billion to fight. Proxy-wise, that's crazy. That's crazy. All right, let's listen to the next clip. This is another Tucker one.
300,000 missing children. That's something else I've read reference to.
Look, over 500,000 children have been trafficked into this country.
This problem is just so enormous, and the bureaucracy is so complex and hard to fight, and they always win in the end. Why would you take this job?
So this is his interview with the new border czar, this Tom Homan guy. And again, they're talking about the 300 to 500,000 missing children that have been trafficked into this country. We talked about this the other day when New York Mayor Eric Adams brought it up. We've talked about this in the past with Tim Ballard and the Sound of Freedom movie and all that. So again, here is that same conversation, this time coming from, the border czar, the guy that's been involved in the Mexico border for over a decade now.
I say this many times because of things I've seen in my career. So I grew up in town 2,500. I fast forward. I'm standing back with a tractor trailer, 19 dead people at my feet that baked to death in back that tractor trailer, including a 5-year-old little boy who suffocated to death. And on top of him was his father who was trying to protect him. During that investigation, they said that little boy,
I don't know if this guy has a lisp or what, but he's a little bit hard to understand. But basically, he's telling stories of why he's taking this job, and he's talking about the little boy that basically, oh my God, endured so much. And then he's going to reference a 9-year-old girl that was raped multiple times. So obviously, he must have seen so much awful stuff in terms of the cartels and the southern border that, again, it's personal for him. He wants to put a stop to this stuff.
Begged his father not to let him die because he wanted to see his mom again. Here's a 5-year-old little boy who knew he was dying and asked his dad for help. And his dad, his dad can't help him, right?
No.
I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that were raped multiple times by members of the cartel. Grown men crawled upon this little girl, took everything innocent and pure from her. Her life would never be the same. Look in her eyes. There wasn't life in her eyes. It's just, this little girl's devastated for life. And this happens every day. I wrote an op-ed of Fox News, and I says, if Joe Biden wins the presidency, we lose the border. When you lose the border, trafficking of sex trafficking will skyrocket. Child deaths will skyrocket. Migrant deaths will skyrocket. American deaths will skyrocket from drugs coming across that border. So when President Trump calls me up, says, you've been complaining about for 4 years. You want to come fix it? How do you say no?
Man, he was a little bit hard to understand. So basically, he was recanting, like I said, all of the unbelievably awful stuff he's seen on the southern border. And so he ended it with, when President Trump called me up and said, hey, you've been complaining about this for the past 4 years. Do you want to come and fix it? How can you say no? Anyway, this guy's kind of a badass dude. I mean, again, when I think of Trump's cabinet appointments, I've been very critical about a lot of them because they kind of have one thing in common. And James will talk about that on the podcast on Monday. But this guy, Tom Homan, I like this guy. I think this guy's the right pick. You need a guy like that in charge of the border and in charge of, just putting an end to all this trafficking of human people and then closing off that border and then ideally not allowing fentanyl to come in so people die from fentanyl overdose. Like, man, that is a problem. That is a major problem and it needs to stop. It absolutely does. And I do think this guy's the right guy. All right, next clip. I want to play this again. I promise this will be my last Professor Jeffrey Sachs clip, but this kind of reinforces what we've talked about several times and recently. And he also references something that I've played for you guys 5 or 6 times, and that is General Wesley Clark. So more than anything, I want you to know, I know what I'm doing with this stuff.
There was regime change in Syria. What does it mean?
Wesley Clark, the general who headed NATO,
yes,
went to the Pentagon just after 9/11, and famously he was showed a piece of paper that said we're going to have 7 wars in 5 years, and he was completely dumbfounded. He said, "What does this have to do with anything?"
This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
7 countries. We've been at war in 6 of them now, including in Syria.
All right, so that just reinforces, again, everything we've talked about a few different times. And so of those 7 countries, basically 6 of them are dealt with. The only one left is Iran. And so, again, put that on your front burner. Whether it is, actually, this is interesting. Seriously, think about this. So Iran is the only one left. And by the way, again, I am not saying any of this because I was born there. There's no bias here. I'm literally calling a spade a spade. So think about what's taken place recently. They tried to blame the Trump assassination on Iran. Okay? They've tried to blame this drone activity stuff on Iran, saying it was Iran that released a mothership of drones in the East Coast a month ago. So again, you'll notice that, there's provocation that is wanting to take place. And I'm telling you, as I think about what could happen in 2025 to trigger something, because again, you need a trigger, you need something awful to happen in order to pin it on somebody, in order to then go after those people. And honestly, I mean, I'm sure you all can think of the example I'm about to give you, but if you can't, take a minute. Take a minute to think about something so awful that happened that caused the entire country to rally behind a president that, quite frankly, nobody liked at the time. And all of a sudden, that all goes away. We're all rallied behind him. Patriotism, nationalism takes over. And next thing you know, what happens? We get into a 20-year war in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Trillions of dollars later, military-industrial complex has a ridiculous 20-year run. that comes to an end in Afghanistan in 2021, late 2021. And then what happens? In early 2022, we go right into the Ukraine war. Seriously, like, tie this stuff all together. And again, I'm trying to reinforce this stuff or bring things up multiple times because again, it is complicated. It really is. Like, you can't get this stuff in one conversation. You just can't. First of all, I think that there's a natural, I don't know if it's a mental block or if we're naturally, most people don't want to think this could even be taking place. I know I was one of those people, 100%. That's why I didn't care about politics until, COVID happened and it really impacted my freedom. And then it caused me to kind of, ask some questions. And that's all it is. It's just asking questions. So anyway, I apologize for reinforcing this stuff over and over again, but honestly, I do think that you have to hear it more than once, and you have to hear it explained a little bit differently by this person, a little bit differently by that person. And then one day, I'm telling you, if it hasn't happened for you yet, it will. One day it'll just click, like everything will just click. And then you'll really look at everything differently. And honestly, in my opinion, the correct way and a much more honest way. Again, you might not like it. You probably won't like it, but at least you know the truth. At least you know the truth. Whew. All right. Sorry about that. I went on that was like a little ad-libbing rant D. Ray D goes rant. All right. That wasn't really a rant though. I think that was just more real talk. All right, let me see if there's anything else I want to play for today. All right, you know what? It's Friday. I know I'm at 31 minutes, but you got all weekend to listen to this. So, okay, this is a clip from Peter Thiel. I've talked about Peter Thiel before. He's the billionaire co-founder of PayPal. He's Elon's boy. He's now Trump's boy. He's totally like in the Republican crew, and he's also JD Vance's mentor or sponsor, in my opinion. He's the one that really has championed JD Vance. I've talked about that before, but he went on Piers Morgan and did an interview, and this clip in particular, it's so weird because he comes off so awkward in this. And actually the entire interview he came off awkward in, but this is when Piers Morgan asked him about, Luigi Mangione and the killing of Brian Thompson and what he thought about it and all that, just see if you can picture Piers Morgan. And then if you don't know what Peter Thiel looks like, I don't know, picture like Richie Cunningham or something like that. But this is awkward. Listen to this.
To those who think this shooter is a hero because he did it because he said this healthcare executive was presiding over a healthcare system which kills thousands of Americans by denying them cover, what would you say to them?
I don't know what to say. I still think you should try to make an argument, and I think this is you should, there may be things wrong with our healthcare system, but you have to make an argument, and you have to try to find a way to convince people and change it by that. And this is not going to work. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there are all sorts of things one could say about it, but I don't think, and I think the motives feel. I don't want to go into all the particulars here, but I don't think there's anything heroic about them.
That was so awkward. Again, it's on the Deep Shallow Dive Instagram page if you want to watch it. But first of all, dude's face was like so shiny. I wanted him to post his skincare. I'm just kidding. Anyway, just a really, really awkward interview from a billionaire that, kind of makes him look, I don't know, just made him look weird more than anything. Okay, next clip. All right, somebody sent me this yesterday. I think I've actually played this before, but honestly, I can't even remember. But it's a great clip, and it's honestly something that has to make you think. And it's the concept of, why is there no live footage or any videos whatsoever about what's going on in Ukraine and the war in Ukraine? We don't see anything. And by the way, I went on TikTok and I tried to look, and there's nothing. There's a gajillion stuff about Gaza and the horrific tragedies that are taking place there. And obviously we know there's billions of dollars being sent there. But there's even more money being sent to Ukraine, as we've talked about so many times. And this fits into basically the earlier clips from, Tucker Carlson, where he interviewed the Russian guy, Sergei Lavrov. And so, if we've sent $200 billion to Ukraine, why is there no footage of anything? So here's Senator Tommy Tuberville. I don't even really like this guy, but this is a great take.
Think about, when was the last time you saw live footage on the ground in Ukraine? It's rare, because Ukraine is losing, and is losing badly. This comes after we just gave Ukraine $60 billion more of taxpayer money earlier this year to prolong this war. I see President Zelensky, a uniparty puppet, is here begging for more money on a campaign trail with Kamala Harris. It feels like he's here every other month demanding more and more taxpayer money. That's because he knows that the money spigot will cut off if Kamala Harris doesn't win in November.
All right, so obviously that clip was before the election, and then you've seen Zelensky met with Trump and Emmanuel Macron. Actually, I don't know if you saw that, but it was the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And so Zelensky was there with Trump and Macron and all that. So anyway, all right, man, I seriously, I want to just keep going. I really do, but I'm at 36 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up. Have a great weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed the diversity of clips today. I really got into a little bit of a zone. I like this. But, I'm just going to leave you with this. Honestly, this is all me trying to convey a bunch of information to you in a digestible manner. So again, you have a working knowledge of all this stuff. And quite frankly, even more than a working knowledge, because to be honest, if you really can grasp everything we talk about, which I know you guys can, I mean, this puts you ahead of 95% of people when it comes to your level of awareness of geopolitics. You'll be able to talk all this at your Christmas parties. All right, I'm just kidding. Love you guys. I really do. I appreciate you listening. I genuinely do. So call a spade. Have a great weekend. Make sure you listen to Monday's episode with James. It's really good. And your boy will be back on Tuesday. All right.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.